Hi, my name is Sarah Johnson. After 4 years of relentless studying and working, today is the day I stand on the stage of a prestigious university in Texas, holding in my hands a bachelor's degree in supply chain management. I had envisioned returning to Austin, continuing to contribute to our family business, Johnson and Company, fine woodworks, the pride of multiple generations, where exquisite handcrafted wooden pieces had made my grandfather's name a symbol in the world of high-end interiors. I believed that was where I belonged. And now, with the knowledge I had gained, I would work with my family to take the company even further. But just a few days after returning home, during a chance visit to my father's office to look for some insurance documents, I discovered a truth that shattered every hope I had. In a locked drawer was a set of legal papers, finalizing the transfer of the entire company to my younger sister Abigail months ago. No one had told me, even though I had been working 60-hour weeks to keep orders on schedule. When I confronted my mother, she only sighed, her voice cold as steel. "You're good with your hands, but you don't have a head for business. Abigail is the future of the company." That sentence cut like a knife, not only devaluing me, but making it clear that all the years I had spent in the workshop were nothing more than a supporting role in a play whose ending they had already written. Have you ever given your all to a job or a relationship only to be cast aside? If you have, I truly want to know, where in the world are you listening to this from, so I'll know I'm not alone. From a very young age, I learned that in my family, love and recognition were never shared equally. Abigail, my younger sister, was always called the genius from the moment she learned to read a year earlier than other kids her age. Whenever guests came to the house, my mother would proudly brag about Abigail's straight A report cards, about her acceptance into the most prestigious private school in the city, about her summer study trips to Europe to broaden her business horizons. My father would boast that his youngest daughter had joined the school's business club, had even won a student entrepreneurship competition. And of course, when Abigail turned 16, my parents bought her a brand new car, bright red, with white leather seats and a custom license plate that read, Abby, like a little smirk every time she drove away from the house. And me, from as far back as I can remember, I was boxed into a single role, the child who's handy but not smart. While my friends went to summer camps, took dance lessons, or studied foreign languages, I was assigned to clean the workshop, dust the display shelves, sweep up wood shavings, and help pack products for delivery. I can still remember the sharp chemical scent of wood glue clinging to my hair, and the feeling of my hands cracking every winter from the polish and varnish. To my parents, that wasn't labor. It was practical skill training, a phrase that sounded noble, but was really just their way of justifying not letting me learn what I truly wanted. That divide became even clearer when I entered high school. Abigail always had a private coach for presentation skills, was given money to attend business conferences in major cities, wore fashionable dresses and designer shoes to impress future investors. My mother's words, even though she was only 17. Meanwhile, I wore hand-me-down uniforms, walked in shoes with worn-down heels, and rarely received any encouragement beyond. "You're really good with your hands," as if it were some consolation for the fact that they never believed I could ever lead a business. When I was accepted into college to study supply chain management, I hoped things would change. I thought this degree would prove to my parents that I could use not just my hands, but also my mind. But in my very first year, every summer and winter break, I was summoned back to the workshop to work without pay. My parents said it was an investment in your future, and that no one gets paid while they're still learning the trade. The work wasn't just standing at a bench. It meant delivering orders, taking inventory, dealing with suppliers when shipments were late, even covering shifts for sick craftsmen. I did it all, from carefully carving intricate patterns into walnut tabletops to hauling heavy planks into storage. Meanwhile, Abigail rarely set foot in the workshop. She would usually only stop by on special occasions, carrying a camera or hiring a professional photographer to stage a few behind-the-scenes shots that made it look like she was part of production. Then she'd post them on Instagram, racking up thousands of likes paired with polished captions about creative spirit and family tradition. That alone was enough for my parents to gush. Abigail has taken our brand to the next level. She has the kind of strategic vision few people possess. I don't deny that Abigail had a knack for communication and drawing attention, but the way my parents overlooked all the silent work, the part I handled, made me feel invisible. They never mentioned who stayed in the workshop until midnight to meet a VIP client's deadline. They never told anyone that I was the one who negotiated with suppliers during a sudden spike in lumber prices, saving the company tens of thousands of dollars. All they ever wanted to see in me were a pair of working hands, not a mind capable of calculation or a heart capable of dreaming. Many times while I was bent over sanding the surface of a table, I could hear Abigail and my mother's laughter drifting down from the upstairs office as they discussed new marketing plans. Occasionally, I would catch my father's gaze through the glass window, an expression, not unkind but cold, as if I were simply another component of the machinery in the workshop. Necessary, but never worthy of being placed at the center. That feeling seeped into me day after day, quietly eroding my confidence and planting the thought that maybe they were right. I would never be smart enough to lead anything. And yet another part of me still held on to hope. I believed that if I worked hard enough, if I kept contributing and proving my abilities, they would have to acknowledge me. I clung to that fragile belief throughout my college years, studying diligently while throwing myself into work at the workshop whenever I could. I had no idea that while I was striving to become a worthy part of the company, they had been quietly writing a different script, one in which I was never even considered a potential heir. After graduation, I returned to Austin with a simple but fierce conviction. Now, with a degree in supply chain management in hand and years of hands-on experience at the workshop, I would truly become an integral part of Johnson & Company Fine Woodworks. I pictured myself sitting in strategic meetings, discussing plans to expand into new markets, developing new product lines. But the reality was far from it. In the very first week, I was swallowed by an unending cycle of work 60, sometimes 65 hours a week, starting when the shop opened at 7 in the morning and leaving only when the clock's hands hovered near midnight. My tasks stretched from drafting technical designs to selecting lumber, cutting, joining, sanding, polishing, inspecting quality, and finally delivering the finished products. The pay I received was just enough to cover the rent for a small one-bedroom apartment on the east side of the city and to keep my over 10-year-old pickup truck running. On some days, I had to choose between filling up the gas tank or buying materials to test a new product idea. Still, I persevered, telling myself this was just the starting phase, that the sacrifices I made today would pay off tomorrow. I can still remember every single project I worked on. There was the time a famous 5-star restaurant in Houston ordered a solid walnut dining table over 3 meters long, requiring perfectly aligned wood grain and cuts accurate to the millimeter. I spent weeks selecting each slab, calculating shrinkage ratios based on humidity, and working through the night to finish on time. Or the custom wine cabinet for an ultra-wealthy client. The entire frame made of white oak, tempered glass doors, etched with intricate patterns, and an interior fitted with adjustable color, LED lighting to showcase each rare bottle. Every detail was sweat, every surface coated in wood dust clinging to my hair and clothes. Meanwhile, Abigail, the future of the company, according to my mother, rarely appeared in the workshop. On her busiest weeks, she might stop by for a few hours, usually at midday, wearing a new designer dress, glossy high heels, and walking straight to the showroom to pose for photos. Occasionally, she hosted a PR event, which in reality was just a small cocktail gathering for a few social media influencers, where she would deliver a couple of polished lines and pose beside the products. Products, of course, that my team and I had made. Yet, when the photo appeared on Abigail's Instagram, the caption always read, "Proud to present our latest creation," followed by the number Abigail Creates. What hurt me the most was how my parents reacted. Every time Abigail posted, my mother would instantly share it on Facebook, praising her daughter for bringing our family brand closer to the world. But when I completed a difficult order, all I got was a nod and a reminder not to forget to sweep the shop before heading home. I had never once heard them publicly acknowledge my contributions. Even though the company's annual revenue had surpassed $2 million a figure everyone knew came largely from the high-end custom projects I personally executed financially. My parents had a favorite phrase for the greater good. My low salary was explained as so the company can reinvest, pay other staff, and purchase rare hardwoods. All of which sounded perfectly reasonable if you overlooked the fact that Abigail still received a monthly executive allowance despite her only executive responsibility being to manage her social media posting schedule. I didn't know the exact amount, but it was enough for her to flaunt regular trips abroad, fine dining at luxury restaurants, and pieces of jewelry I had never even dared to dream of owning. Some late nights when I was alone in the workshop finishing a project, a message notification would chime. It would be a picture from Abigail in the family group chat, showing off that she just signed a promotional deal with some interior design brand. My mother would reply immediately, "Amazing, you truly are the family's treasure." I would simply set my phone down in silence and return to the table, waiting for its final coat of finish. I tried not to compare, kept telling myself I was doing this out of passion, that results would speak for themselves. But as time went on, I felt more and more like a gear jammed in a machine spinning endlessly, yet no one knew my name. The gap between what I gave and what I received was not just about money. It was about respect and recognition, something I had craved my entire life, but had never once been given. That night, the workshop had closed earlier than usual because a large order had been delivered that afternoon. I stayed behind in the office to look for the insurance contract for a new VIP client, a restaurant chain planning to order a set of walnut tables and chairs for their soon-to-open location. My father usually kept important documents in a large filing cabinet against the wall, secured with a simple lock. I knew where he hid the key. He had asked me to fetch files for him many times before. When I pulled open the third drawer, I sifted through thick folders with handwritten labels. Contracts 2022 suppliers, Q1 insurance. But then in the very bottom corner, I saw a black folder, not with the usual handwritten tags, but with a neatly typed label, Succession Plan, Confidential. My heart began to beat faster. Something told me I shouldn't open it, that this was likely my father's private document. But curiosity and a rising sense of dread overpowered that hesitation. I slid the folder out gently, sat down in the chair, and began turning the pages. On the very first page, the bold heading read, Johnson and Company, Ownership Transfer Agreement. I read each word slowly, a cold shiver running down my spine as the truth became clear. 100% of the company's ownership would be transferred to Abigail Johnson on my father's 55th birthday, just 10 months away. There was no clause granting me any share, not a single line mentioning my contributions or my rights. I swallowed hard, hoping I had overlooked some section of explanation. But as I flipped through, things only grew worse. A separate section titled Employee Transition Plan laid out the steps for staff restructuring after Abigail took over. There, in black and white, my name appeared under position termination, with a projected date 6 months after the transfer, to allow Abigail to establish her own management style without being influenced by the old structure. In plain terms, they had planned to fire me long ago, just waiting for the right moment. I let the folder drop onto the desk, a wave of nausea washing over me. The room suddenly felt small and cold. I could hear the ticking of the clock, the low hum of the air conditioner, but it was as if every sound was being smothered. All those years of staying late at the workshop, sweating over every project, skipping holidays to meet deadlines, it had all been nothing more than temporary labor in their eyes. They had decided I would never be part of the company's future, and they hadn't even bothered to tell me. My hands were trembling as I opened the desk drawer, searching for my phone. My first instinct was to capture everything, every page of the contract, every line, every signature. I knew that if I put this folder back without proof, no one would ever believe me, especially when my parents and Abigail had worked so hard to project the image of a united family. Carefully, I turned each page, making sure to photograph them clearly, including the document numbers and signing dates. As I did, memories flooded back. The night I stayed up until dawn fixing a paint flaw on a rush order, only to see Abigail post the next morning about our teamwork success, smiling brightly in the photo. The time I turned down a weekend trip with friends to help my father host an important client, while Abigail enjoyed a European vacation. And the day I suggested improvements to the production process, only to be dismissed without a thought. Then months later, Abigail presented nearly the same idea and was praised for her brilliant strategic thinking. When I finished taking the photos, I sat still for a long time, the phone in my hand, my eyes fixed on the folder as if it were the physical embodiment of betrayal. I don't know how long I stayed there, only that when I stood up, my legs felt unsteady, and I had to grip the edge of the desk to balance myself. Before leaving the office, I returned the folder exactly where it had been, locked the cabinet, and placed the key back in its usual hiding spot. I didn't want them to know I had discovered it, at least not yet. Driving home, I went slower than usual, my mind spinning. The yellow glow of the streetlight slid across the windshield, casting hazy streaks of light across the steering wheel. I felt as if I had just stepped out of one world and into another, a reality where everything I had believed for years was nothing but an illusion. And worse, the people I had thought of as my family, my anchor, turned out to be the very ones quietly preparing to cut me out of their lives. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the cold words in the succession plan and heard my mother's voice echoing. Abigail is the future of the company. Now I understood that wasn't just a careless comparison. It was a verdict signed and sealed long ago. And I also knew that from this moment on, every move I made would have to be calculated, because I was no longer just the undervalued employee. I was the one holding the evidence of their true plan. That Sunday was our monthly family dinner, a tradition my parents had maintained for years. It was always held in the big house where Abigail and I grew up, with the long white oak table that stretched nearly the length of the dining room, a piece my grandfather had built and kept in pristine condition to this day. Normally, these evenings revolved around talk of work, Abigail's plans, and occasionally a few reminders for me to try harder so I could contribute to our shared future. But this time, I had decided I would be the one to steer the conversation. I arrived a little early, not to help my mother prepare the meal as I usually did, but to go straight into the dining room. In my bag was a thick stack of papers, the printed copy of the entire succession plan, confidential, that I had photographed the week before. I took my seat, feeling an odd sense of calm, the kind you get before walking into an important meeting you've rehearsed for, down to every word. Abigail walked in first, her hair softly curled, wearing a jade green silk dress, the faint trace of expensive perfume following her as she pulled out the chair across from me. My parents came in after, each carrying a dish to the table, the clink of silverware, the scrape of chairs, the soft hum of the wine narrator, all the familiar background noises. But inside me there was only silence. When everyone had just settled in, I reached into my bag, took out the file, and without a word, placed it neatly in the center of the table, flipping to the first page, so the bold title, Succession Plan, Confidential, was clearly visible. The small talk stopped instantly. Abigail glanced down, narrowing her eyes. My father froze with his wine glass midair, while my mother tilted her head slightly, her lips pressed together. I didn't waste time. Does anyone want to explain to me why my name is listed under position termination? My voice was calm, but each word carried weight. My father spoke first. He set his glass down and laced his fingers together in front of him. Sarah, this is business, not personal. Abigail needs financial security more. You're still young, you have plenty of other opportunities. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Other opportunities? I've been working here practically full-time since college, 65 hours a week. I design, I craft, I fix every tiny flaw to protect this company's reputation. And yet, in your eyes, I'm still just another opportunity. My mother put her knife down and leaned toward me. You're skilled with your hands. I don't deny that. But business is a different matter. Abigail has vision, the ability to build a brand, something you don't have, and 20. I turned to look at her, forcing my voice to stay steady. And that's why you and Dad quietly made plans to strip me of every right I had and fire me like some disposable employee. Abigail, who had been silent until now, let out a faint, mocking laugh. All you know is how to make furniture. You don't understand marketing. You don't understand how to create an image so customers will pay more. You should be realistic and accept that. Her words were like acid dropped onto an open wound. I looked straight at my sister without blinking. You're right about one thing. I don't know how to create a fake image, but I do know how to create real value. And customers come to Johnson & Company for the quality of our products, not for pretty colored photos on Instagram. The room went silent for a few seconds. My father started to say something, but I raised my hand to stop him. No need to explain further. You made your decision a long time ago. I was just too foolish to see it. But from now on, I owe this company nothing. I stood, pushing my chair back gently but firmly. In that moment, I saw a flicker of alarm in my father's eyes, my mother pressing her lips even tighter, and Abigail leaning back in her chair, arms crossed, that smug smile still fixed on her face. I gathered the documents, leaving a copy on the table. Keep it. Let it remind you that I know everything, and I will never forget. The air around the table felt heavy as lead. The familiar sense of roast meat, wine, and basil from the salad now turned nauseating. I turned and walked out of the dining room, the sound of my heels striking the wooden floor in steady beats. When the front door closed behind me, I drew in a deep breath. In that moment, I knew I had just stepped out of a cage that had held me for years, and I would never go back to it again. After that Sunday dinner, I knew I had cut one cord, but there was still another stronger one: the employment contract and the invisible binds of my daily work. I couldn't just walk away immediately. Doing so would mean losing my client network, my access to project files, and leaving all my work behind for them to use as if I had never existed. I needed to leave, but leave in a way that made it impossible for them to erase me from the picture. In the days that followed, I still came to the workshop as usual, showing no sign that anything had changed. I still wore the same old jeans, still tied on my sawdust-stained apron, still greeted the staff, and got to work early each morning. But beneath the surface of those familiar hours was a plan, calculated, deliberate, and unfolding step by step. The first thing I did was start saving every single project file I had ever worked on. I opened each design file on the computer and copied them to my personal hard drive. I saved everything: the initial sketches, the completed CAD drawings, and especially the before and after photos of each piece, the ones I had personally taken mid-process and after completion. Those images were the clearest proof that I was the one who had actually built the work, not Abigail or anyone else. At the same time, I began collecting every email from clients I had received over the years. Some of them were so detailed in their praise that rereading them still warmed my heart. "Sarah, the dining table you made has become the centerpiece of our banquet room. No one walks in without asking to buy one just like it." 4. "The wine cabinet you designed for me is a masterpiece. I'll be recommending you to all my friends." I downloaded them all, organizing them by project, so that when the time came, they would serve as undeniable calling cards for my skills. The next step was to reconnect with the relationships I had quietly built over the years. I reached out to suppliers of rare hardwood, the ones who had always set aside the best boards for me because they knew I would use them well. I messaged the skilled finishers who had worked alongside me on major projects, checking in and hinting that we might collaborate on a future venture. I called a few interior architects who had trusted me with the most intricate details of their projects. Most of them responded the same way, excited at the thought of me striking out on my own and promising to refer clients if I actually took the leap. One of the most important meetings was with Charles Whitmore, the owner of a luxury resort chain spanning from Florida to California. I had once built him a set of outdoor teak furniture water-resistant with the resort's logo carved into the chairbacks, a project that had even been featured in the interior design trade press. When I asked to meet, he arranged for us to sit in a private lounge and ordered me a cappuccino as if we were longtime business partners. I was direct. "If I opened my own workshop, would you consider working with me directly?" He didn't hesitate. "Sarah, I don't work with your company. I work with you. If you leave, I'm coming with you." That answer wasn't just a promise. It was a guaranteed ticket to my future. Once the groundwork was in place, the biggest opportunity came from somewhere I never expected. Thompson Custom Interiors, Johnson & Company's largest competitor in the region. They specialized in high-end interior design and installation, but lacked a department dedicated to fine handcrafted woodwork. Their director, Laura Thompson, had heard of me through an architect's recommendation. We met on a drizzly afternoon at her downtown showroom. Laura got straight to the point. "I want to open a luxury craft division. I need someone with both the skill and the experience to handle demanding clients. I want that person to be you." I listened, silent for a moment, then asked, "If I agree, what are my terms?" Laura smiled and handed me a proposal: 40% equity in the new division, a starting salary of $95,000 a year, and full authority over design and production processes. I read the figures again and again, feeling as though I had just stepped out of a cramped, airless room into a wide open sky. But I didn't accept immediately. I needed time to settle my affairs at Johnson & Company to make sure that when I walked away, I would take everything I needed and leave them no time to recover. In the weeks that followed, I kept up the appearance of the devoted craftswoman, completing every project on time, accepting client praise on behalf of the company. Only I knew that every email I sent, every product photo I took, was another brick laid on the road to my new future. I began narrowing the scope of information I shared at work. In the past, I would hand out design drafts early so the team could review them together, but now I held on to them until they were nearly finished. I became meticulous about file storage, leaving only PDF copies on the shared computer while keeping the originals safe on my personal drive. No one noticed because on the surface, everything still ran smoothly. Some evenings after the shop had emptied, I would sit alone at my workbench, looking around the space I had called home for over a decade. The scent of wood, the hum of the sanders, the warm yellow light, they were as familiar to me as my own heartbeat. But I also knew that if I stayed, they would become shackles. And I had promised myself that when I left, it would not be as someone begging for a job. It would be as a free woman standing as their equal or above. When everything was ready, I met Laura for coffee. We shook hands and I told her, "I'll join Thompson, but I need 3 more weeks to wrap up everything here." Laura nodded, her eyes full of understanding. We agreed to announce the creation of the new division the moment I officially left Johnson & Company, a move I knew would catch my family completely off guard. From that day on, every morning I walked into the workshop with a different feeling. It was no longer the sense of being trapped. It was the quiet thrill of counting down the days until I would walk out the door, taking with me everything that was mine and everything they never thought I could hold on to. I chose the moment for my final move with Care Friday at 4 o'clock, the last Friday of the month. It was perfect timing. Most of the month's projects were nearly delivered. The majority of the staff would be tidying up early to head home, and my father would be in his office wrapping up the week's reports. I walked down the workshop corridor, the machines already silent, the faint scent of walnut lingering in the air. In my hand was a plain white envelope. Inside it, my resignation letter printed on the company's own letterhead, a small irony only I would appreciate. My father looked up when I knocked and stepped inside. He was hunched over his desk, scanning a few contracts, the light from the window highlighting the deep lines at the corners of his eyes. "What is it, Sarah?" he asked, his tone weary, but still holding that usual composure. I stepped closer and placed the envelope directly in front of him. My resignation effective immediately, I spoke each word clearly, leaving no room for negotiation. He blinked, taking a moment to process. Then he pulled the envelope toward him, opened it, and read quickly. When he realized I wasn't joking, his expression shifted, surprise melting into alarm. "Sarah, you can't be serious. You can't just walk away right now. We've got several major projects underway." I stayed still, my hands resting lightly on the back of the chair opposite him. "You've been planning to push me out for a long time. I'm just helping you get there sooner." He pushed his chair back and stood, his voice quickening. "Listen to me. I know I've been too rigid. If you stay, I'll give you a share of the company. We can manage it together." I met his eyes without blinking. "You made your decision a long time ago, and so did I." In that instant, I knew every promise he offered now was nothing more than a desperate attempt to patch the damage. If I stayed, it would only be a matter of time before things went back to the way they were, Abigail on magazine covers, and me in the workshop with calloused hands. He sighed and rubbed his forehead. "You'll regret leaving like this." I smiled faintly, but didn't answer. Instead, I turned, opened the door, and walked out, leaving him alone in the office with the letter on his desk. That weekend, I heard from a few friends still at the company that chaos erupted almost immediately. The complex custom orders, the ones that required my oversight down to the last detail, came to a standstill. The workshop crew didn't know how to handle the specialty drawings because many of the techniques were ones I had developed myself. Suppliers called nonstop asking about specific wood specifications that only I knew. One VIP client sent an email canceling their contract after not receiving a timely response. Abigail, of course, didn't step in to handle the chaos. Instead, she posted an Instagram graphic white text on a beige background that read, "When one door closes, another opens." paired with a long caption about positive change and new energy for the company. Below it were hundreds of comments from her friends praising her inspirational leadership. While in the workshop, the staff were tearing their hair out, trying to untangle the wrecked delivery schedule. On Sunday night, I got a short message from one of the veteran craftsmen. "The shop's like a smashed beehive right now. No one knows where to start." I stared at the screen without replying. Part of me wanted to help them, the colleagues who had truly worked alongside me for years. But a bigger part knew this was the direct result of the leadership's own secret decisions. And now they were tasting the consequences. Meanwhile, I was already preparing for the week ahead, my first week as a partner at Thompson Custom Interiors. And I knew that when that news went public, the chaos at Johnson & Company would only be beginning. The press release went out on Monday morning, just 2 days after I'd left Johnson & Company. Thompson Custom Interiors announced the launch of their new luxury craft division, Thompson Artisan Woodworks, featuring a photo of me standing in a brightly lit workshop, surrounded by the exquisite pieces I had built. The solid walnut dining set for the 5-star restaurant in Houston, the white oak wine cabinet with etched glass doors for a private collection, the water-resistant teak lounge chairs with engraved resort logos for Charles Whitmore's luxury chain. Every image carried a clear caption, designed and handcrafted by Sarah Johnson, now co-founder of the Artisan Woodworks division at Thompson. Within hours of the news spreading, my phone was ringing non-stop. Not from Johnson & Company, but from major clients. Among them were 5 of the company's long-standing strategic accounts, clients I had personally worked with for years, calling to confirm they would be moving all their orders to Thompson. They all gave the same reason. "We work with Sarah, not just the name on the sign." By the end of the week, the new division's project calendar was fully booked for the next 3 months, with contract values exceeding $600,000. Meanwhile, at Johnson & Company, Abigail was officially pushed into the top executive seat, and then the very first project signed by the young female CEO turned into a ticking time bomb. A wealthy family in Dallas had commissioned a $120,000 ebony kitchen system, a type of project that demanded deep knowledge of the material and precise processing techniques to prevent warping and cracking. I knew this project well. Before I left, the clients had spoken with me about their specific requirements. The ebony had to be thoroughly kaolin, dried, sourced from Africa, and come with FSC certification to guarantee its legal origin. Abigail, perhaps eager to prove her business vision, ignored those requirements and instead purchased a cheaper batch of ebony from a new supplier she'd met at a PR event. The problem was, this wood was not only inferior in quality, but also improperly treated. Once production began, the workshop team discovered that the boards were splitting along the grain, forcing them to discard nearly a third of the cut panels. Abigail refused the advice to change materials and insisted on pushing forward, which caused the project to fall more than 2 months behind schedule. When the impatient clients finally received the delivery, they were furious to find warped cabinet doors and visible gaps in the joinery. They immediately demanded a full refund and posted a lengthy account on a prominent interior design forum detailing their disappointing experience with Johnson & Company. The post quickly spread within the architect and designer community, triggering a wave of comments criticizing the company's new leadership. Within 2 months of my departure, Johnson & Company's revenue had dropped by 40%. Clients who had once been the pillars of the business had either signed contracts with Thompson or were actively looking for new partners. Suppliers began demanding advanced payment out of concern for the company's stability, while workshop staff complained about the lack of clear direction. Abigail, meanwhile, continued posting motivational quotes on Instagram about learning from failure and building back from scratch. But behind the camera, the company was bleeding out day by day. I didn't gloat openly, but I couldn't deny that this was the inevitable consequence of a system built solely on surface-level glamour. And I knew that if things kept moving in this direction, Johnson & Company wouldn't just slide downhill. They'd be hit with a fatal blow no one yet imagined. Abigail's mistakes with materials and deadlines had already left Johnson & Company reeling. But the true fatal blow came from her long-nurtured ambition to build a lifestyle brand. Perhaps in an effort to salvage the company's image after the Ebony Kitchen debacle, she decided to pour money into an extravagant media campaign. She spent $30,000 hiring an advertising agency from California, a team known for producing cinematic videos for high-end West Coast interior brands. On paper, the concept sounded impressive. A sleek, modern home with glass walls overlooking the ocean. Models dressed in refined designer clothing, moving gracefully among luxury furniture, fingertips brushing over polished wood surfaces as golden sunlight streamed through sheer curtains. Abigail's vision was to position Johnson & Company as a lifestyle brand selling not just furniture, but an entire image of the upper-class way of living. The problem was once the video was released across YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, industry professionals, particularly in the woodworking and architecture communities, immediately noticed something. Most of the pieces featured weren't even made by Johnson & Company, and several had never appeared in the company's product catalog at all. Some of the tables, shelving units, and chairs were exclusive designs I had created during my time there without any credit given, and in some cases had been subtly altered so they would look similar but not identical. On the National Woodworking Forum, a new thread appeared titled, "Whose Furniture is Johnson & Company? Advertising." Members began posting side-by-side comparisons. One frame from Abigail's video and one photo of the original piece from my personal portfolio, which I had posted publicly before leaving the company. The wood grain patterns, joinery, techniques, and carved detailing matched exactly. Some architects even commented that the dimensions and structural elements in the video differed from the originals, indicating these were simply image knockoffs rather than actual products the company had built. The trade press didn't take long to respond. A leading luxury design magazine published an article titled "Johnson & Company Launches Brand Video, but Who Really Made the Furniture?" The piece broke down the footage frame by frame, citing client records and designer testimonies, and concluded that most of the featured pieces were either my work or produced by entirely different workshops. They even quoted an old statement I had given while working there describing the process of crafting the white oak wine cabinet, a product that appeared in the video but had never been produced by Johnson & Company. After my departure, the fallout came faster than anyone expected. Several newly signed clients immediately sent cancellation notices citing misrepresentation of manufacturing capabilities. An interior design firm in Chicago, which had been mid-order on a nearly $200,000 project, demanded a full refund of their deposit and shifted the order directly to Thompson Custom Interiors. Suppliers of rare hardwoods, already wary after the kitchen fiasco, now insisted on full payment in advance before shipping any materials. On social media, the hashtag #Johnson products began to trend with people posting photos of pieces I had made, captioned, "This is what Johnson & Company used to be." Abigail responded with a long post about collective creativity and inspiration from many sources, but instead of calming the backlash, it only enraged more industry professionals. Many accused the company of trying to cover up copyright issues and being dishonest about its actual capabilities. Within just 2 weeks of the video's release, the reputation Johnson & Company had built over 3 generations had nearly collapsed. The phone at the office no longer rang for new orders. It rang for complaints and refund requests. Employees began submitting resignation letters, looking for more stable jobs. The faces that once beamed at PR parties now avoided the camera altogether. As for me, watching from the outside, I didn't feel glee, but I didn't feel sadness either. I understood this wasn't just the price of one failed marketing campaign. It was the inevitable result of how they had run the company, valuing image over substance, dismissing the people who actually created the products, and believing social media glamour could replace craftsmanship and trust. Abigail had wanted a lifestyle brand, and she had created the most vivid portrait possible of a family business failure. Less than 3 months after the infamous lifestyle brand video, Johnson & Company officially filed for bankruptcy. The news appeared in the local press as a shock to the community, but to me, it was simply the ending I had seen coming. When the orders disappeared, suppliers demanded payment upfront, clients turned away, and key staff members left. One after another. The company no longer had the cash flow to survive. My father was forced to put everything up for sale, from the lease contracts to every single machine in the workshop. On auction day, I arrived early. The shop was empty, sunlight filtering through dusty windows, falling across the workbenches where I had once stood for hours, the lathes, saws, and sanders that had been my companions for over a decade. When the auctioneer called out set of hand-carving tools, chisels, planes, rulers, clamps, I raised my paddle immediately. No one bid high for what seemed like ordinary tools, but to me they were the only pieces of memory I wanted to take. I bought them for a price so low it was almost absurd, less than the cost of a fancy dinner. That afternoon, my parents called me to their house. They no longer had the confident, proud air of people who once led a celebrated brand. My father, for the first time in years, spoke with a trembling voice. "Sarah, if you come back, we'll give you full ownership of the company. You can rebuild it from the ground up." My mother, sitting beside him, her eyes red, nodded in agreement. I looked at them for a long time. Part of me wanted to recite every word, every action they had taken to push me out the termination plan, the cutting dinner remarks, the countless times they dismissed my work. But I didn't need to say it. They knew. And I knew. "I've rebuilt," I said slowly, "but not with you." As I walked out of that house, I felt lighter, as if I'd finally set down a boulder I'd carried on my back for years. The luxury craft division I had co-founded at Thompson Custom Interiors was now booked solid for 12 months. My income was higher than any salary I had ever dreamed of at Johnson & Company. But the greatest value wasn't in the money. It was the creative freedom, the ability to experiment with new techniques, work with rare woods, and collaborate with clients who truly respected the craft. I still keep the habit of standing at my workbench in the morning just as the first sunlight spills through the windows, my hand resting on the old handplane I bought back from the auction. Every scratch, every worn patch on its handle is a reminder of how far I've come from being labeled the daughter who's good with her hands, but not her head, to sitting alongside some of the top interior designers in the industry. My father now works odd jobs at a small-town furniture store, cutting boards to size, fixing tables and chairs for walk-in customers. Abigail moved to Los Angeles and opened an online decor shop, mostly reselling cheap imported items. Occasionally, I see their images flicker across my social media feeds, but I never linger. I don't seek gloating satisfaction, nor do I need an apology. Because I've come to understand that sometimes the best way to repay betrayal is to live so well that they regret it every single day. Not because you struck back, but because you proved them wrong. And the greatest reward is the life I have now, independent, free, and built around doing what I love. If you've ever been like me, like Sarah, working tirelessly, pouring your whole heart and energy into a place, a relationship, or a dream, only to be met with disregard, pushed aside, or even betrayed, then I want you to remember this. Your value does not depend on whether others acknowledge it. Your value lies in what you have built and are still building, in your skill, in your persistence, in your ability to stand up and keep walking even when someone tries to slam the door in your face. You don't need anyone's permission to succeed. You have the right to start over, to take everything you've learned and experienced and carve out a new path, one where you decide the direction. Believe that every scratch, every drop of sweat, every moment of being underestimated is the raw material that will forge a stronger version of yourself. And one day, when you're standing in the very place they thought you'd never reach, you'll realize that the greatest victory isn't proving them wrong. It's living a life you're proud of without needing them at all. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next